Welcome to One of Those, the show that explores the artistic culture. I'm your host, Adam Butler, back with another episode. Thank you so kindly for being here. All right, so I'm going to make this intro quick, not only because I have a dope guest, but also because I'm not in my normal settings, doing some stuff to the studio, so I have to record down here today. No worries, though, that's for my YouTubers, the people that's watching me. You know, I'm not in my normal studio setting. I'm in basically the basement recording because we're just doing some work. So we're going to get right into it. Right after I let you guys know about the Up On Game Network. Remember, I always got to let you guys know about the Up On Game Network. Follow us on all social platforms and also subscribe to our YouTube. So much dope stuff, so much dope content, new shows popping up every single day. I can't even keep up anymore, but they're all fire and they're all for you. Follow us on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube, and go ahead and subscribe on all podcasting platforms. The Up On Game Network, that's the squad. Now, I told you we had a dope guest this week, and this time I mean it. Well, I mean it every week. All my guests are dope, but this guy is just following with the trend of dope guests. We've got writer, director, producer, the creator of HBO's hit Entourage, and also the host of the Victory podcast. My man Doug Ellin is in the building, man. We're going to talk about Entourage. We're going to talk about his career. We talked about Kanye a little bit and much, much more, man. Dude's just a wealth of knowledge. We talked about some sneakers, obviously the big sneaker moment on Entourage. If you watch the show, you know it. But really, we just talked, man. This is a really cool guy. Had a great opportunity. It's really a great opportunity to speak with him. Man, without further ado, Doug Ellin's in the building. Doug, what's going on, man?
What's happening?
Oh man, it's great to have you on. We were talking off mic. I was telling people that, and I'm sure you've heard this a billion times, but I was a huge fan of the show. I remain a big fan of the show. My wife and I actually watched the movie about a month ago, so I'm a big fan of the show. And the pop culture moments that were in the show is one of the main reasons I wanted to talk to you, amongst other reasons. You're doing cool things now, man. So welcome, brother.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No problem, man. So that's why we can start at the beginning. How did you even get into filmmaking? I know what one of your first films was. It's actually it's really interesting, and I'm going to say one of the films I really enjoy watching because it's just funny. You'll get into it, but like, how did you get started, bro?
So I went to college in New Orleans. I went to Tulane University, and I was on my way to law school, and everything was heading in that direction. And about 2 weeks before I graduated college, I'm like, I can't go to law school. I'm not doing this. And I told my parents I was moving to LA to do stand-up comedy, which they thought was pretty insane. I didn't know anybody except for my wife-to-be, who I'd met on the phone a few weeks earlier. That was the only person in LA I knew. And I got out to LA and got some temp jobs and took some night classes at UCLA and started doing stand-up. And then I wrote a short film, and I was working at New Line Cinema, which big movie company. I was in the mailroom, but I handed out flyers for people to come see me do stand-up and to raise money for this short film that I did. And the VP of New Line came to the show. I don't know why. He must have liked me or something. But anyway, he gave me $10,000 to do this short film, and I did it. I ended up selling it to Showtime and got myself into the American Film Institute, which is a great film school out there. Absolutely. And that's it. And then I did another short film right after film school, and then the movie you were talking about, a guy saw it and called me up and said, I want you to direct this movie, which was, when you come out of film school, you don't get offers to direct movies no matter what they are. But it was like actually, it wasn't even that. I think it was $50,000 budget. And we did this movie called Fat Beach that is still playing on Showtime 30 years later. So it's pretty crazy. That whole budget was, after everything was finished, was under a couple of $100,000.
Yeah, shout outs to Fat Beach, man. I definitely don't say that like I smile when I think about that movie because it comes on all the time. I remember it. I just didn't know that you had directed Fat Beach. So like when I was doing my research, I was like, what? Like it's just it's just one of those things that came together for me. Like, it's this movie that I've watched a million times. You know what I mean? Yeah. Shout outs to Coolio, recipes of Coolio. I didn't know you were involved in that film, and that adds more to me. It makes your story even more interesting, especially when we get to Entourage, right? Which is all about people in Hollywood hustling, trying to get on, obviously the character Vincent Chase was at this point is a movie star, but it's about, people trying to make it in this like bizarre world.
Yeah.
I know that the story is, based on Mark Wahlberg and his entourage, and I know that you have a lot of influence in the story as well, obviously. But is that why you were attracted to a story like this? Because it sounds like to me you hustled to get where you needed to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I wasn't attracted to the story at all. When Mark came to me and said he wanted to do a show about his friends, to me it sounded horrible. I'm not an entourage type of guy. I'm not a person who likes to have somebody else support me or any of that stuff. But what I am, which Fat Beach, I mean, Brian Hooks, who's a buddy of mine and who's hilarious. He's got a line in Fat Beach that I gave to Turtle and Entourage 12 years later, whatever it is. So the similarities, and again, Fat Beach, I was 22 years old and I was given a storyline and a script. So I had to work with, what I had, but they're very similar things to me in that they're just about friendship. I don't really care about, much else of it, but what got me to go, okay, you know what, I could see my way into doing Entourage was I thought about my friendships and my family, and that's the stuff that really motivated me, not any of the stuff with Mark and his crew. So, I really I put a lot of that stuff into Fat Beach as well as into Entourage. And in Fat Beach, my friend Scott Benner, who ended up being like my music supervisor on Entourage, was just my buddy. I put him in the movie, and then 15 years later, when I didn't even know he really had an interest in music, he all of a sudden started telling me what a great ear he had for music, and I started listening to his picks. So there's a lot of those elements that even though Fat Beach was we shot that movie in 6 days. I mean, that's like, it's so crazy with no money. I mean, and we were shut down for a year and had to come back. I mean, there's so much crazy shit in that movie. I mean, there's a black girl who turns white in the middle and then turns black again at the end of it, because I had producer like hitting on girls, they'd quit, they'd leave, he'd fire my cinematographer. But anyway, we got it out there. And I think the reason, and it's not this great piece of filmmaking. And Chris Rock used to make fun of it in his stand-up, which I thought was a big compliment. But, at the end of the day, what's in Fat Beach to a certain degree is the dialogue that I write and the friendships that interest me. So even though it was a silly story, there's a lot of those elements in it as well,
Yeah, man. And again, I didn't know you had directed it prior. So when I think about it, I can see what you're talking about. When you think about Entourage, like I said, the cultural impact it had. When you were season one of that show, especially writing and getting it together, did you have any idea that you were working with something that was gold, that was going to turn into a cultural phenomenon?
Of course not. I mean, I was hoping to get it picked up, but I was obsessive about words and dialogue, and those are the things. But you have no idea whether things are going to take off or not. I did a movie after Fat Beach called Kissing a Fool. That again, somebody else's idea, but they brought me on, which also has similar types of dialogue, and that movie got picked up by Universal Studios, and they released it like it was a $50 million movie, and it didn't make money. So you never know what's going to happen. I had no idea. I mean, even most of the people at HBO didn't really believe in Entourage. So when it came out, and all of a sudden it was not only popular, but the critics really liked it, it was pretty surprising. So.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, again, I was a young person. I mean, I talk like I'm an old man now, but I was a really young guy when Entourage was out. And again, as someone who is a DC dude, an East Coast dude who had no idea what Hollywood was like at all, and still really don't, to be honest with you, this idea of these guys out here who were East Coast guys trying to fit into this really wacky place. You know what I mean? That's something for me that just was. I don't know. It really just expressed like a culture of people that really wanted to make it. Go for it. Yeah.
I mean, it was about, I mean, the way I grew up, which East Coast and, working class neighborhood, it was about those friendships more than Hollywood to me. And I've always said this, you could have put those four guys in any setting and you would have hopefully enjoyed hanging out with them. Then the Hollywood obviously was so, gave him that fish out of water element. But
Yeah.
what really concerned me was the group dynamics and the friendships, which, I think most people, especially East Coast people, can really relate to that, and
Yeah.
that's how I grew up, and that's how a lot of the people that I know like the show did.
So, the show obviously turned into a success. At what point were you all like able to get all of the cameos that I mean, Tom Brady, LeBron James, Kanye, whatever, people like that. A lot of, I want to ask you about the Kanye episode, but we don't need to go there. But there's a lot of, a lot of
fucking Kanye.
Bro, listen, let me tell you,
we can go anywhere. It's sad. There's
yeah.
nothing sadder to me, and Jews and African Americans, or Jews and blacks, whatever you want to say, are supposed to stick to fucking together. We've been through a lot of the same shit.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, when assholes like Kanye spread bullshit like this, younger black people who may not know that history from the civil rights or what Jews have gone through before that, they look at it as oh, this guy's giving me wisdom and truth.
Yeah.
But and whatever it's worth. I mean, you get in trouble for saying anything. But Fat Beach, which it seems like an unlikely movie for me to obviously direct, and I got a meeting. I met with Ice Cube on Friday after that, before he knew who I was, and he expected when I walked in I was going to be black. He really did, and and I never want to ever speak, because you get in trouble nowadays about black culture. But I grew up, I wanted to be Eddie Murphy. I wanted to be Bernard King on the New York Knicks. I wanted to be BB King. I mean, those were the people that I idolized, and there's nothing sadder to me. I mean, all hatred is garbage, and lumping in any groups, because as anyone who's smart knows, like, because Kanye's a fucking moron, I don't think you're a moron because you're black. I don't associate you at all, unless you decide to say, oh, you believe everything Kanye says. But when people lump people into groups, it's not only just stupid, but it's dangerous, because the fringe elements and the lunatics, they take that stuff and they run with it. So it's a shame, because I was a big fan of Kanye, obviously had him on the show. And what was great about Entourage also is it was very popular in the African American community. And I think the reason for that is, like Jews were maybe 50 years ago, we had a lot of groups against us, and the key to it was to stick it together. And when you see someone like LeBron James, who, when LeBron came on Entourage, he said to me, this is my E, this is my drama, and this is my turtle. And that's the stuff, that makes me feel good, because I mean, I really did believe, and I don't want to get too fucking corny and political. I swear to God, when my kids were born, I have a 21-year-old and an 18-year-old, I thought the world was really changing. I really believed 20 years later, we would not be saying my black friend, my Asian friend, my Jewish friend. I just said, that's my boy. Like, that's my friend, and seems like, to me, we've taken some steps backwards, but.
No, it does feel that way. And it does, it's ironic that he, when you look back at Kanye then, it was like, it was a completely different person. And, and the funny thing is, he didn't just talk about Jewish people. He talked about black people, right?
Yeah.
The slavery is a choice thing, the white lives matter thing, all of that stuff, the George Floyd thing, again, and this isn't to get super political. It's just that these things, when you spew out this stuff, when you use the machine gun of hated rhetoric, right? Hatred and rhetoric, you're gonna hit somebody, and people are gonna stop believing in you. You know what I mean? And then you're right, like,
and I wish they really hang on to that, because everybody was like, oh, why don't they hang on to the other stupid things he said, like slavery is a choice? Which I always try to tell people, everybody can act like a tough guy until they're in the situation. And from slavery to the Holocaust, whatever you want to say, we all like to believe. I would love to believe I'd be Jamie Foxx during slavery and Django. But you know what? The truth is, nobody knows how you'll react in a situation like that. And instead of just being empathetic to what people, including his ancestors, went through, he says something. I mean, that should have been the thing that people went nuts about, like that. Think about how stupid of a comment that is. But
man. I agree with you. But just to the cameos, lots of cool cameos on the show.
Yeah.
You know, how did you like? What was? Did it just get to the point where the show was so popular, people were just asking to come on, or were you? Did you all have to like really work for that?
So season one, it was impossible to get anybody. I didn't even know if Mark was going to show up for his cameo in the first episode, and I was like, "Yo, are you coming or what?" But by the middle of season two, we started getting calls, especially from athletes. A lot of people are like, "Why are there so many athletes on?" I love athletes. I love sports. I love people who get to the top of whatever field they're doing. And so when I get a call that LeBron James wants to be on the show, I'm putting him on the show. You know, when I hear that Tom Brady likes the show, you know, you're on. So, you know, a lot of people are like, there are so many sports people on it. But yeah, you know, like, and I'll always be grateful. Lamar Odom was one of the first cameos we got. And it was not easy to get cameos there because people were like, what is this show? What is it? So, and Lamar, you know, he's obviously had some troubles in his life, sadly.
Yeah.
But he was so great to us and so great to show up that early on. And, you know, those are the things you treasure. So.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, the athletes stand out to me, you know, obviously like Jamie Lee Singler and people like that, you know, big Sopranos fan, and they really stand out to me. But, you know, the athletes really stand out to me. And I think for this audience, that's something that people really, you know, when you really think about this show, it's a cool thing. And then you've seen shows that kind of, you know, that kind of were inspired by Entourage, but kind of, you know, it had the same kind of feel, especially about athletes, you know, but.
Or you mean a lesser feel, but yeah.
Word. Word up. I like you. No, but you know, there's I just think that it was just such a dope thing, man. And that's why I say it impacts culture. But I got to talk about the character Turtle. Okay.
Yeah.
The character Turtle is one that, you know, for me, I related to Turtle, not so much because of how he, you know, his stature in life or anything like that, but just he was a cool dude on the show. He was a sneakerhead. He was an athlete guy.
Yeah.
He was, you know, he's a New York guy. I don't like his football team. Okay. But I like him. What was the inspiration for Turtle?
So when we try to put this group together, it was, you know, while Mark had this crew, it really wasn't that. It was finding, you know, what any successful TV show does is what are the family dynamics then, you know, and you know, drama, you know, is the nagging mom, you know, like E is the responsible dad.
Yeah.
You know, Vince is the fucking chosen child who just has everything. And Turtle's the spoiled teen who really just, you know, I mean, a lot of people love Turtle for a couple of reasons. One, Jerry is just great. And he's just got a likability that just, you know, you can't necessarily write that, but also he was a supporter. And everybody, we all want positivity around us. We don't want haters. And Turtle was always the guy that wasn't just a yes man, but he was the guy that like, we're going to make this happen. It's all going to be good. And, you know, so I think that's why people related to him. And, you know, obviously him smoking a lot of weed and wearing you know, sweats and sneakers, but Jerry had a lot to do with bringing that character to life. So
he was definitely the more East Coast well, I guess drama too. You know, all of them actually E as well. But
listen,
you know,
they are all New Yorkers, and
and
it was important to me to cast New Yorkers. But Jerry and I talked to Jerry on our podcast all the time. But Jerry, you know, he was so raw and so Brooklyn. And you know, if you watch Jerry Ferrara now on Power or anything else, and it's not that like he worked on accents. He's just evolved living in LA for 20 years from this real authentic kid from Brooklyn. And that's what attracted to me. He was, you know, Jerry was like 23 when we started, and he was just, he's just, they all are though. All four of them are just very authentic, but Jerry was so young and so New York, while the rest of them had been in LA for a while, you know?
So, you know, we were talking about Turtle. There's a storyline, and this is a sneaker thing now. Now we get into the sneakers, okay? And I know you told me off, Mike, you had 400 at one point, which I think is incredible. But
that's 3 now.
I think it goes like that for a lot of people, though. Honestly, I think that's like the natural progression. I have
you
much
know
less
what?
than I used to.
I'm just not cool enough to fucking rock Jay-Z's look anymore.
Oh, I don't believe that. I don't believe it. I don't believe that. But on the show, I think you had one of the more famous sneakerhead storylines. People still write stories about the Fukuyama Air Force One. Those things sold for like, I think like $88,000 recently is
Yeah.
crazy. Just walk me through that, man. Was it because you were a sneakerhead at the time? Were you aware of people, hunting sneakers and trying to get customs and stuff like that at the time?
Yeah. So it was really starting to blossom then, and
Mhm.
undefeated, and you'd see these lines up at stores for
Yeah.
shoes, and then my younger friends were telling me about people trading sneakers and
Mhm.
standing out lines. So we just started discussing. I'm like, all right, we have to do something with this.
Yeah.
That's definitely something very relevant. I can't stop the messages from coming in on my phone. It's really annoying. But
It's all
so
good.
I mean, we figured these are really relevant times, and exactly what I said earlier um, is the exact dynamics of that situation.
Yeah.
Where Vince is, going to spoil the kid, and
Mhm.
the others are going to kind of make fun of this teenager who's got these wants of this crazy stuff. But
Mhm.
it was wish fulfillment and
Yeah.
very real for a lot of people, and
Yeah.
we wanted it. We wanted to try to do it real, and we were lucky enough to get Nike to come join us and
Mhm.
make the shoe, which was just it was all very surreal and very cool.
Yeah, it's a beautiful sneaker. I remember at the time thinking like, I want that. You know what I mean? And at that time I was, I probably didn't realize what I would have to go through to even think about getting that sneaker. Clearly I don't have it now, but it's a really dope. And that's what I say, man. We can talk about Entourage all day, but that's what I think that show represented is cultural moments. And when I say culture, I'm talking about like American pop culture, especially, for you, it may have been LA culture with New Yorkers inside of it. But I think it really impacted people within my generation to really say like, yo, not only was it just cool to watch, but I think it motivated people. I think it kind of started this boom of creatives. I'm not trying to just say that because you're here, bro. Like I really think that. I think that people watching Entourage and saying like, wow, here's this group of guys that really, like Sex and the City had an impact, right? Sex and the City had an impact on women and people that enjoyed that show, right? It really showed women in New York doing that thing. I think it was the same sort of impact for Entourage for seeing young guys in LA being authentic, being real, living their lives, having all sorts of issues, even though they had access to money and things that I didn't.
Yeah.
Still, you can relate to that person. So, I want to give you your flowers while you're here, man, because I think it was a really, really dope thing. And you guys are keeping the legacy going with the podcast.
Yeah, we're doing some good stuff for the Victory of the Podcast. But it's like I said, the show, I believe why Sex and the City worked and why Entourage really worked is because people look at that group and go, oh, those are my friends. And I wish that I could enjoy success with my friends. And everything that I tried to do on the show was ultra realistic. Probably the least realistic thing is that Sex in the City as well is that men, as they head into their late 30s, stay this close with their boys because it usually doesn't happen. Usually family and other things get involved. But those were really based on my friendships from childhood that are still my best friends to this day are people I went to kindergarten with. So I that was very important, and I think that's what people really hang on to.
I want to talk to you about podcasting, but I do have one more question about Entourage, and I'm sure you've gotten this question a million times. So I'm sorry to say something people asked 100 million times. I really am. But is there a possibility of the show coming back? I know, you guys did the movie some years ago, but was that the bookend? Was that the end of the story, or will we see the guys again?
You know what? Anything's possible. I just did a show though with Kevin Connolly, Kevin Dillon, Charlie Sheen, Jamie Lynn Sigler, Emmanuel. Trying to think who else. I don't want to miss anybody from Entourage, but a lot of my cast and crew from Entourage, similar vibe in a different kind of setting. So we finished that pilot, and we're hoping to get that out there.
Awesome.
But Entourage, there could be a second life. We've done with the podcast, we've done like live shows around the country and stuff, which have been wild. We're supposed to go to Australia. So maybe anything's possible,
Yeah. Well, shoot, man. I mean, I'm looking forward to that show. I will tell you that. But let's just talk about podcasting for a second, because I think you really broke ground. I love seeing stuff like that, right? Like I remember the Soprano guys had their podcast going. Obviously, the Victory podcast, yours, right? I think this is really cool for people that are fans of the show. But just talk to me about do you think like on your show, on Entourage, you really kind of like talked about what was very current in Hollywood at the time. Like I was watching an interview with you and you talked about how it was funny, how television, how you guys kind of poo-pooed on television at the time, right? And comic book movies. Now comic book movies are all the rage and television is, you have, multiple Oscar, Emmy winners, on television now, right? But I think that podcasting is starting to transition from that thing of like, oh, guy in basement with microphone just talking to A-list celebrity has podcasts now, right? Yeah. Emmy-winning actors and Emmy women, are having a podcast now. What do you think about the podcast boom? And do you think it's sort of like the future for creatives in Hollywood and across the globe?
Yeah, well, I think what the future is to get rid of all the gatekeepers and everybody can do what they do. And you can, like you and I, in a million years, wouldn't have had this conversation 15 years ago. And the fact that you can go do this and reach out to anybody and hopefully get, I mean, honestly, I don't get this many messages. I'm not this popular.
You are popular. Don't do that. And you have 300 sneakers.
No, they're gone. They're all gone. I sold them to my friend Jordan. But I think that what's interesting, what I did with this new pilot is we went and made it on our own. And I think that you see that with a lot of comedians. Taylor Swift goes and makes her albums in her house by herself, and I think that it's a great time for creatives. And as the internet gets even faster, I think people will be able to release their own stuff, whatever it is. And I think podcast is a great way, for people to get their voice out. Obviously, just like sportscasters, the people who already have a big platform have a big advantage. But you can see a lot of people, if they have something interesting to say, they can find an audience, and it's very cool. And they can, I don't know that the goal should be to make money, but you really can, and doing it from your own home and getting a chance to say things that you want to say is it's a cool time.
Yeah, and I think the definition of podcast has changed as well. Like people are doing podcasts exclusively on YouTube. They have an audio component to it. I saw something on TikTok where a guy was releasing like a soap opera, right? You know how it is with TikTok. You watch one video, all of a sudden you're getting the rest of them. And I realized this dude's doing like a series, and then like obviously like 2-minute clips of like, and I found myself getting invested in this dude's like TikTok soap opera, right? So it's just so many.
But they've done it with shows though too. They do scripted shows, like old radio shows, which is cool, And I mean, we did, we've done animated stuff with our guys, with Kevin Dillon and Kevin Connolly. So there's lots of aspects to it, but I think it's the real great thing is that everybody with a phone can do something creative now, and there's really no excuses not to try if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, and it's funny. My wife asked me. I told her, hey, I told you we're big fans of the show, so I said, hey, guess what? I'm interviewing the creative Entourage. She was like, how'd you do that? I was like, I asked him. What I mean? And like that's like that gatekeeping. I think that gatekeeping piece, and again, that's what made this show cool, because in many ways, the show was about guys having to deal with all of these gatekeepers and still trying to make it. At one point, the guys had to move back home into mom's house. You know what I mean? And like, the realism of that. But I like this idea of knocking down gatekeepers. That's why I'm in full support of what you're doing with your show, with your podcast, because I like to see that you're not letting the network or the powers that be dictate what you do and what the guys do. Again, I saw the interview with you and Robert Meyer Burnett, big fan of his, and he was talking about how, like you mentioned, how there's actors and people that you want to work with that I won't say Hollywood is forgotten, but maybe they don't get the opportunities that you feel like they should get. So you are creating the opportunity for them.
Yeah, and honestly, that happened on Entourage too. I mean, Kevin Dillon and Jeremy Piven, those guys were working actors, but they never really got that solid break to make them out in front. And as soon as they did, they were both, Jeremy won 3 Emmys, Kevin was nominated for a couple, and and you see, wow, holy shit, these guys are as good as anybody on TV. Why don't they work more? Why don't they get those opportunities? So, I think the more access, the better, so and the more the costs go down to create things, the better. So
awesome, man. Well, I can talk to you all day. I really appreciate you doing this show, bro. If I have another opportunity to speak with you, it'd be dope, man.
Absolutely, man. Stay in touch.
Yes. Be good.
All right, be good. Have a good one.
Bye. You too.
Later.
Big shout outs to Doug. Big shouts out to you for always tuning in, man. Again, we're going to get up out of here really quick because, again, I'm not in the studio, so I got to move real fast, all right? But, again, shouts out to Doug, man. And go ahead and binge Entourage. Trust me, it's a lot of jewels on this show that still apply to today. It's a great show. And check out the Victory Podcast as well if you're an Entourage fan, all right? Listen, man. Follow me, MSR_Adam, MSR_Adam. Follow the team, the Up on Game Network, at the Up on Game Network. Follow the squad at On My Feet Network, at On My Feet Network. I'm taking requests for show topics. I like to hear from you. I like to talk sneakers with you. So holler at me. Why don't you? All right. Remember to mind your mental health. That is vitally important. Mind your mental health, okay? Mind your physical health. Always do that and never ever forget. And please continue to be great. I'm up out of here. Peace.